A very long time ago, the world was not a good place. People had forgotten how to be kind. They were cruel and thought only about themselves. All the time, their hearts were full of mean thoughts. It made God very sad to see the beautiful world he had made become so broken and full of hurt. But in the middle of all that darkness, there was one man who was different. His name was Noah. Noah was a good man. He tried to do what was right. He loved his family and he loved God. In all the earth, Noah was the one person who still walked with God, talking to him and listening for his voice. One day, God spoke to Noah. He told Noah a very sad and a very serious secret. God said that because the world was so full of evil and violence, he was going to send a great flood of water to cover the whole earth. It was a hard thing to hear, but then God gave Noah a job, a huge and almost impossible job. God told Noah to build a gigantic boat called an ark. God gave Noah the exact instructions for how to build it. It was to be made from a special wood and covered with tar to keep the water out. It was to be longer than a football field and have 3 whole floors with many, many rooms inside. This boat was not for sailing on a river. It was going to be a place of safety, a floating house for Noah, his family, and many, many animals. Noah listened carefully. He did not argue. He did not say the job was too big. Even though it sounded crazy, Noah decided to trust God and obey. So, Noah got to work. He called his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and he told them what God had said. Together, they began the biggest project anyone had ever seen. They went into the forest and cut down tall trees. They hauled the heavy wood to a place far from any ocean. They measured and hammered and sawed for years and years and years. People came from all around to watch. They would point at Noah and his family working in the hot sun. They would laugh and shout jokes. "Noah, why are you building a giant boat here?" they would ask. "It has not even rained before. Are you afraid of a little puddle?" They thought Noah was the silliest man in the world. Noah would stop his work and look at the people. He would warn them. He would tell them about the flood that was coming and tell them to change their ways. But nobody listened. They just laughed harder and went back to their selfish lives. For 120 long years, the sound of hammers and the sound of laughter filled the air. It was not easy for Noah. He must have felt lonely and misunderstood, but he did not stop. Every nail he hammered was an act of faith. Every board he placed was a choice to believe God's word over the laughing voices of the whole world. He just kept building, with his faithful family by his side, trusting that God's promise was more real than anything he could see. Finally, the enormous ark was finished. It stood like a silent mountain on the dry land. Then, God spoke to Noah again. He told Noah that it was time. God instructed Noah to gather his wife, his 3 sons, and his sons' wives. That made 8 people in all. Then came another amazing job. God caused the animals to come to Noah. 2 of every kind of animal, a male and a female, came from all over. Big elephants, tall giraffes, tiny mice, fluttering birds, and slithering snakes. They came in pairs and peacefully went into the great ark. Noah made sure they all had food and a place to stay. When everyone and everything was safely inside, something wonderful happened. God himself shut the big, heavy door of the ark. It was a sign that Noah's work was done, and God's protection was now complete. For 7 days, nothing happened. They waited inside the ark. Then, on the 8th day, the sky began to change. Dark clouds gathered. A deep rumble was heard, not just from the sky, but from deep under the ground. Then, the first drop of rain fell, then another, and another. Soon it was not just rain from the sky. Water began to gush up from the springs in the earth itself. It was the great flood God had promised. The rain poured down for 40 days and 40 nights without stopping. The waters rose higher and higher. They lifted the giant ark right off the ground. The people who had laughed were now afraid, but it was too late. Outside the ark, the world was covered by the deep churning water. But inside the ark, Noah, his family, and all the animals were safe, warm, and dry. They were floating above the judgment, saved because one man had obeyed. So, the ark floated on the vast ocean for a very long time, 150 days. Finally, God sent a great wind to blow, and the waters began to go down. The big boat bumped gently and came to rest on the top of a high mountain called Mount Ararat. Noah sent out a bird called a raven to see if it could find dry land. The raven just flew back and forth. Then he sent out a dove. The dove could not find a place to land, so it flew back to the ark. Noah waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again. This time, the dove came back with a fresh green olive leaf in its beak. It was the first sign of new life. Noah knew then that the plants were growing again. He waited 1 more week and sent the dove out a 3rd time. This time, the dove did not come back. It had found a new home. The earth was dry. God then said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your family and all the animals." What a happy day that was! After more than a year inside the boat, they all walked out onto the fresh, clean earth. The very first thing Noah did was build an altar to thank God for saving them. God was pleased and made a wonderful, everlasting promise. He promised Noah that he would never again send a flood to destroy the whole earth. As a sign of this promise, God put a rainbow in the clouds. He said, "Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears, I will remember my promise to you and to every living creature." Noah, the man who obeyed when everyone doubted him, became the father of a brand new world. His faith had saved his family and gave all living things a brand new beginning.